Later, we realized that the ISIS dude had done the van attack in Edmonton, just like 2 blocks from here, from my house. So. And of course, I got little tags on my wheelchair that says I was in the military and I was a medic, and I served in Afghanistan. And Army guys love their badges, so it's like Boy Scouts. So.
An interview with Paul Franklin.
AlbertaPodcastNetwork.com. It's a Conspiracy is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network. If you like us and our silly shenanigans, then you should check out Tomato Radio, up now with a smorgasbord of other fine programming at AlbertaPodcastNetwork.com.
So welcome back, everyone, to It's a Conspiracy. This is the podcast where we lay out the beliefs behind selected conspiracy theories, alternative accounts, legends, myths, and more. I'm your host, Andrew. I don't claim to be an expert on anything we're going to discuss today, and I will be wrong, but everything as per the usual. I've got the good fortune to be joined by the velour voice of Charlie.
Hey.
And we're all ready for the fun. Also, we are a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network and are powered by ATB.
Powered by ATB.
Yep. Yay, friends. If you would like to see where we dug up whatever tinfoil hat nonsense we're going to discuss today, then please check out the resources in the episode description. Good times await, and apparently Charlie sneaks in secrets in the episode description from time to time.
Can you find them?
I haven't found any yet. So
maybe they're there, maybe they're not. Maybe I just made it all up.
Go through them all. If you would like to keep up to date on what we were up to here at It's a Conspiracy, then please check out our website, itsconspiracypodcast.com, and you can find out links to our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, email, our Patreon page. And speaking of puppies, I was going to tell a story about a puppy at our house, but we have a puppy with us today.
Exactly.
Live on location.
Achilles.
Yeah, Achilles Walter Franklin.
Oh, Achilles Walter Franklin.
Yeah.
What a regal name.
Well, it's a basset. You got to have 3 names.
Oh, wow. And you can probably tell we have a third voice with us here. We are joined by retired Master Corporal Paul Franklin.
Hey.
Yeah, and it's really good to have you here with us, man.
No, thanks.
Okay, so what we're going to do here is I've got 3 topics coming up, and I'm just going to ask Charlie here, can you tell me if you're familiar with these 3 things here?
You betcha.
Okay, so topic number 1, an in-depth interview with Paul Franklin.
Never heard it before.
Sweet.
Number 2, Area 51.
Yep.
Okay, now number 3.
They've got that really cool diner there, right?
I know.
There is, yeah.
Little alien inn.
We got a buddy who has pictures from the diner. So he's been there before.
It's on my bucket list.
And then the See Them Aliens. So this is number 3. This feels weird to say. See Them Aliens, September 20.
See Them Aliens, September 20.
Are you familiar with that?
I have no idea what you're saying. Is that a line from a movie?
September 19th is the bum rush.
19th.
Yeah, that's the bum rush of the Area 51.
Oh, it's coming. Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
1 million people have signed up.
And more every day.
Yeah, and the Army, all they're doing is just getting 1 million more bullets.
I can't even. Oh,
See Them Aliens.
We're gonna come back to that, but So if anybody wants to do that, that's great. But just
be safe.
Yeah, just be safe. Just be real safe.
I want to film that in portrait mode from a hill, just to annoy people.
So, Paul, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Like I can.
Yeah, sure.
We can start with these questions here, but I mean, is there anything specifically off the top that you want to talk about?
Well, just a quick background. I joined the military in 1998. Okay. I was 30 years old, which is quite old for joining a military, but it was a decision.
30 years old.
Yeah. So
wow.
So I made a couple choices, like. Where was I in my life? I was doing retail. I was working at an electrical wholesaler and that kind of stuff, and just there wasn't much to it.
Right.
And so I thought, what's important in my life? And it was travel, education, and a pension. And I didn't want to pay for any of that stuff. So I'm like, well, what in the world would ever give me that? And then, of course, government work. So
the military, yeah.
Or any government work. I actually thought of park warden for a while as well. And,
absolutely.
Yeah, so I tried my EMR course in Vancouver. Worked really well, enjoyed the hell out of it. Joined the militia, and then did my basic in Wainwright, and then came across and joined the military Wake Force. So
right. And you were in. I saw it on your Facebook here. You grew up in Halifax.
Yeah, I was born in Halifax. We moved out. Probably, I guess, I was 4 years old, but we would go back every second year.
Okay.
And my grandmother had a cottage in Hubbard's, and so we would hang out there.
Man.
So it was wicked, yeah. And then we moved to Calgary. So Dad had a choice between Bridgewater and Calgary. So if you believe in fate, I would have lost my legs in a horrible lobster accident. So,
So you think it was happening one way or the
yeah,
other?
that's fate, right? It's gonna be.
Yeah, we did a Halifax. Well, not Halifax specifically, but the Nova Scotia, the Money Pit. We talked about the Money Pit.
Yeah, big old money pit.
You know how.
We're going treasure hunt.
Yeah, we were saying
Sweet.
there's probably nothing there now, but a bunch of dug up holes, and but yeah, it's interesting.
There's stuff there. There's something. Someone went down below, and there's dead bodies down below at 40 feet or whatever. I mean,
What? Really?
Yeah, they found human bones that were that
Good
old, and
Lord.
and then they traced them to the 1700s, and one of the bones was from the Middle East, and one was from Europe. So I mean, that in itself tells you that even if there's not
Wow.
a treasure, archaeologically, it's an important site.
There's been people there,
Yeah.
and that was the thing. It was a pirate stomping ground for like hundreds of years. So there might not be a treasure there, but you should have been on our Nova Scotia special, man. Oh,
Always here.
Information we could have used earlier, Paul.
Hey, well,
We'll do updates next season.
yeah,
exactly. Come back to it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you're a veteran.
Yep.
Okay. And I said retired master corporal. Can you tell me sort of what's the role of a master corporal?
Okay, so it's the first level of leadership for a group. Now,
Okay.
as a medic, within that, I was the company medic in an infantry battalion.
Okay.
So a company is about 100 dudes. So I'm the guy that helps all their medicine for that timeline. So within that, there's platoons and sections and all this other stuff. So I would have about 3 medics underneath me. And then I would report directly to the OC of that thing. So the major or the lieutenant colonel of that small group. And then we would deploy to, say, Fort Benning to do weapons testing or new kinds of glasses, see if they work. We were kind of, in 2003, we were actually working with weapons with cameras on it. The Israelis showed up and they had it was like a dinner plate or a TV tray, more like it. And they would hold it up against the wall and you could actually see on the other side of the wall. Just shadows and stuff. So it was all super high-tech stuff. And they used us as enemy force, and we got to play with all this cool equipment. First time using drones. There was one that was a snake drone they would throw in, and it'd go up and down stairs.
Nice.
And this is 2003, so this stuff's just wow, right?
Yeah.
And what I love, though, is the trickle-down of technology to us, the public.
Absolutely.
And it does happen. People don't want to think about that. It's same with NASA. For every $1 apparently that NASA spends, it's $100 back in commercial enterprises, be it Velcro or soundboards or computers, touchscreens.
Everything.
I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
Ballistic glass for micrometeorites, and so they can have these big pane glasses in a space station, and yet now that translates down to where we are today.
Yeah.
So
It's wild. And you think about it like something like they've got these little power cells for your phone, something as simple as that, or like solar powered screens. It's a nice thought to be like, oh, they've got the consumer in mind, but that was probably done.
it was never the consumer.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was like, yeah.
But that was the key with the American space station race or space race was always that they had commercial products because the companies were commercial. They wanted to make money. Sure, they made money on the side with military and space contracts, but the real money maker is 10, 20 years down the line when you can actually charge the consumer something amazing for, say, a sheet of Velcro. It's now was $100. Now it's 5 cents.
Do you, and we'll come back to this with our Area 51 conversation, but do you think that a lot of the, are we still waiting on the huge technological leaps that have been promised over the last, do you think all that's coming, holograms?
I'm totally pumped for it because you look at Elon Musk and his Starship.
I was just going to ask about Elon Musk.
I mean, the guy using a stainless steel as a coating or as a structural element, and then the fact that the entire Starship looks like it came out of the Bugs Bunny cartoon with the little Martian dude. Because you have the steps down. It's the funniest thing is you actually have a ladder that comes down off the side. And they all come down and they stand beside this 4-story thing, and it's just wicked. Yeah.
Oh man,
and it's so cool. I love it.
All right. Well, we're getting into some stuff here, but I thought first of all, and this is a bit of a, we're not really interviewers per se. We're kind of idiots. You can probably tell.
Speak for yourself.
I know. But I've got 6 questions to ask a veteran. So, and feel free to elaborate as much as you'd like to into this or not. We already sort of talked about what motivated you to join the military. Do you think that that's kind of covered?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like it was a choice. I mean, in Canada, in Vancouver, there wasn't great opportunities for myself, and
Right.
and I was thinking, the pension education stuff and travel, of course, and being a warden in the national park system was definitely on the radar.
man.
RCMP
So cool.
in the north would have been really cool and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I was dating my wife at the time, and she was all for me trying something different. And then, of course, the military peaked up, and it was 98 was just after Rwanda, and I
Right.
really thought that Canada had done something wonderful. Even though we didn't do anything, we stood up and we watched and we marked that as our piece. And then, of course, Yugoslavia at the time. Everybody was worried and upset about
Yeah.
it, and the UN guys and the NATO guys have post-traumatic stress because of Rwanda, because of Rwanda and because of Yugo.
Yeah.
But now Yugoslavia, 20 years later, a friend of mine just biked through Medek Pocket where he fought the Croats, almost to hand,
wild.
and it's now a wedding destination.
Nice little park to go to. And
Yeah. Hang out, go see a genocide, then go to the beach.
Is there something there? There must be something there to really mark what has happened. I mean, that's only 20 years.
Well, that's the fun part.
That's not even 20 years,
Not
I
even
guess.
20, yeah, 20, no, it just happened 20 years. So
Okay, yeah.
they just had their anniversary last year.
Okay, okay,
yeah,
right.
And what's amazing is, so right along the Dalmatian coast, it's known as the honeymoon destination of Europe. That's where everybody
man.
went to. So back in the old Yugo days, and then of course nothing happened during the war and stuff. But now it's back to that. And then you go a little bit inland, and then you're in Croat, or you're in Bosnia Herzegovina, or you're in Serbia, and you'll be driving along, it'll be perfect town, and then the next town over, it'd be empty, or 2-3 people who happen to be Serbs, and all his neighbors were, say, Bosnian Muslims, and he killed them all, and he's the last guy standing.
Unreal.
Like just cold stuff. Yeah.
It's hard. Like it's hard for guys like us to understand that. So I know that, and this is a bit of a backtrack, but tell me a little bit about your time in boot camp.
Well, I went to Wainwright, and so the general boot camp is in Saint Jean, Quebec, so
Okay.
just outside of Quebec City, and you do all the ironing your shoe or ironing your pants and making
Yeah.
everything crisp in your bed and all that stuff. Well, in Wainwright, we did it in a tent, so a big, huge mod tent, 15 people in it. But even back then, we just had a section in the back for the 2 girls, so we still stayed in the tent. And,
Right.
and it was never even a thought that the girls would have to be in a special place or
Right.
outside of us, because that was our section, that was our basic training stuff. And so some of the girls that have recently posted or recently gone to Hawaii on exercise, they're all of a sudden this camp of 4,000 or 5,000 RIMPAC guys. So they're from Australia, they're from the States, they're from Canada, they're from Japan, all over. And then they put the women in the center, and then the military police have to escort them to the showers and to the food.
Oh, man.
Like that, it's a different world. So in my
In the 20 years.
yeah, so in my timeline,
Yeah.
even in 20 years from basic training, we never even did that. You already saw, women were just normal people. Like, shocking.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, who would have thought?
Yeah, and it's become. Did you see any of that? Like, there's been a huge amount of people being like, there's this toxic male culture around the military, and did you see?
When we were in Afghanistan on my second tour, we had 4 female medics with us, and the infantry guys didn't. The 3rd Battalion, PPCLI, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, didn't really have that many women yet in their forces. They had 1s and 2s, but we didn't have any in their sections. And they had signalers, they had cooks, they had people doing paperwork and stuff. But sometimes they would put them on patrol with these infanteers.
Right.
And the Americans would wonder, why are you bringing a woman out into these horrible places?
Oh, man.
And the answer was that once you brought a woman out, the kids would see the woman in uniform on patrol, and they would run out to them and say hi. They've never seen a woman in combat, never seen a woman dressed in military gear. And so suddenly, the Taliban and the locals wouldn't blow us up because their kids are right there. They don't want to kill their kids. And so
Right.
now, every once in a while, by half the tour or halfway through the tour, it was just the women were going on patrol all the time. Just because it was a huge benefit.
Sure.
And the best part is they actually get to go and talk to the locals. So the interpreter would go off with them, talk to these girls and women, and they'd say, hey, did you ever see anything bad? And then they would get intelligence that we would never, ever get.
from these kids.
From the men.
Oh,
So
wow.
the men would
or the
be-
men. Yeah.
So the men are all hushed up and silent and
Yeah.
doing their little meetings and stuff, and the women are doing their little chirpy bird stuff, and they were telling their great stories. And all of a sudden, these stories
Wow.
meet together, and then back at the camp, we would share them together, and then
Put
was
it all
like,
together.
oh wow, this
Yeah.
is so and so, yeah.
And this is the enemy.
Yeah,
And
well,
they,
not necessarily. The enemy was within the towns. The town people aren't the enemy. They're
Right.
just Afghans. Most of the Taliban are actually Pakistani. The guy that tried to kill me was Pakistani. He grew up, was born in Quetta, Pakistan. Went to Mullah Omar's madras, which was funded by the Saudis. And you can all link everything if you want to Saudis. And because they're the ones that helped create the Taliban by funding the Pakistan Secret Service, which
Right.
helped the Taliban and their rise to fame, if you will.
So, I guess in that regard, it's like they've got these little kids, and you're like, did you ever get you must have thought, like, is this going both ways? Like, we're not using them, but it's part of it.
We are using it without a doubt. But we're trying to expose them to enough Western culture that it's not overwhelming. And so the first thing in Bosnia, the kids would ask is for candy. They're Europeans.
Yeah.
They want food. They want Western stuff. In Afghanistan, they wanted a pen and paper because that's how much they believed in education, that these kids alone, all by themselves, just wanted to be educated. They wanted to become doctors and lawyers and all those fun things.
That is wild.
And the Islamists started in the 1400s, actually the 400s, and then they went through, and there was a couple Sikh kingships, and then there was a couple other kind of kingships in Afghanistan, and then eventually we get to where we are today. So, I mean, it's not the hardcore Muslim country it was, but it's still an Islamic state that Canada supports. It's the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan is the place that Canada is an official ally to.
Yeah.
And we kind of forget that because that title, it scares some people.
It shouldn't, but
No, it shouldn't, because it's just a religious title. I mean, we're also allies with Israel, which is a Jewish state.
Exactly.
And there's Christian states and there's Buddhist states, and Nepal is a strictly Muslim or a strictly fundamentalist Buddhist state.
Yeah.
And the Buddhists in Myanmar have been killing the locals. So I mean, it's not that they're. I used to think that was the only religion that wasn't out there whacking people, and then a friend of mine reminded me of the Japanese, and I was like,
I was just about to mention the Japanese, yeah.
But it was Shinto Buddhism, but that's kind of making an excuse for their crimes. And they killed more people than the Germans or even the Soviets.
And it was the undocumented case of that. It was hundreds and hundreds of years of just like, we're better than you and we're just taking over. But it was never about religion. It was always about power and the desire to control.
It was more about they were better ethnically. It was the true ethnic cleansing kind of thing.
Felt better.
So they thought they were better people, better humans, and so they would go into China, and they literally wiped out 30 million Chinese from 1933 to 1945, and they've never said sorry.
Yeah, some of them won't even acknowledge it happened.
Yeah.
That's a little scary. And we're talking about people in the top levels of government. Anyways, that's.
Yeah.
So I got here number 3. What was or is your primary job after training? And so I'm assuming that was the
So that was the basic. You become a soldier,
okay.
and then you do your trades course, and that was in Borden, and it was about a year or half a year for the first level, and then about 6-7 months for the second level, and you become basically a paramedic and some nursing skills.
Are you still involved in like any kind of like medicine or nursing or anything like that?
I've done some tactical medicine teaching. But my main problem is that to be on the ambulance, you actually have to be physically fit. And so they won't even make an exception for me to teach on the ambulances.
They won't let you teach?
No. Because I can't lift anything theoretically in my wheelchair, even though I've done amazing things in my wheelchair, working with sledge hockey or wheelchair rugby or you name it. And some things that regular people that
couldn't do
are fit and with legs would never be able to do. I've done more after my limb loss than I've ever did before. So, and I used to climb up mountains before. So.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Where did you serve the majority of time in your service? Do you want to put your coffee here?
I don't want to spill it on the stuff because I'm going to get klutz. I was in Borden where I did the training in Ontario, and then my whole time I was posted to Edmonton, and I did 8 years at 3rd Battalion Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. So I always consider myself a medic first, but a medic within the the Princess Patricia's, and I've always felt a kinship to those guys. I was only in one company for most of that time, other than the tour I went to in Kandahar where I blew up, and I was with Bravo Company. But most of the other time was with the Charlie Company, and yeah, great time and a couple of drinking days. And as a medic, I used to sew up people's arms when they get in fights. And
oh man,
yeah. And yeah, I'd still be drinking. So the sutures were never straight.
a drunk medic.
That's me.
I'm sure that's happened a few times over the and actually speaking of these camps, what was the best? And we'll come back to this. What was the best military food you were ever served?
The best military food is Canadian, believe it or not. And it was in Dubai at our supposedly secret base that was there, and now it's in Kuwait, but don't tell anyone.
Shh. Hush, hush. Yeah, don't tell anyone.
The key to knowing where there is a secret base is to look for the Tim Hortons.
I was just going to ask about that because I've heard about this. Is that true?
Yeah, it is true.
It is true. Wow.
So we moved to Kuwait, and Tim Hortons just opened up outside the airport gate.
Oh, man.
And so, of course, all the Canadians are lined up to go there.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So and the next one most likely will be in Erbil in northern Iraq and Kurdistan, and that's where Canadians are, and that's where we're posted. And it's as it's becoming more safe because ISIS is out. I totally see us getting a franchise with there.
It's a sign of progress, you know. But so the food in Dubai was really good.
Amazing. It was an Air Force base, and the cooks in Canada are amazing, and they got all the fresh food. One of the best parts was the yogurt. It's a mix of goat and cow, and my God, it was the best yogurt I've ever had in my life. Oh. And we would eventually get it sent to Afghanistan because the planes would come out of Dubai straight to Kandahar, and we're like, make sure you get the yogurt.
Isn't that wild? Yeah. Isn't it funny what a food comfort can get you through?
Well, the Americans are all nuclear radiated food and all the rest of the stuff, and it's just it's disgusting. And so they would serve one American meal, and then they would serve 2 Canadian side dishes, or like a roast beef or a fish of some sort, fresh fish at that. And so the local or the armies that were in Kandahar, so the Dutch would just happen to show up on patrol at lunchtime because they're like, oh, this is awesome. And then the Americans would just happen to show up because the American food is good, but it's only good for a week because it's like tacos and pizza and burgers, and that's fine. But you get tired of it pretty darn quick.
Really? What was the worst military food you were ever served?
I would have to go British camp in Kabul. So yeah, it was just horrible. Yeah, just gruel. It was just brown pasty with vague meat parts.
Straight up like Charles Dickens gruel.
Oh yeah. It was, it was more like a stewish thing. Like no idea what the meat was. Could have been children. I have no idea. I was British, so you never know, right?
And I followed you on Facebook for a while. I know and I love your sense of humor, and I love how grim it is sometimes. Like, that's really funny.
Yeah, there's some pretty grim
But what's a funny experience that you feel could, like, not necessarily only military people could understand, but like something that could only happen in the military that's just really funny? And this can be on like the spectrum of like man, that's dark, or like hilarious, like, oh, he slipped on a banana peel.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a paramedic, we're always seeing horrible injuries, and but as a paramedic, you're always laughing at these horrible injuries. So I go, dude, that's gonna hurt tomorrow, and his arm got twisted.
Oh god.
But we were talking about Suffield earlier, and one of the things that happened in Suffield, we were in an exercise, and someone put their helmet down on the ground, and it had just cloth on it, and the cloth itself turned orange. So they called range control, the guys that run the range control, and so they came out in their truck, they cordoned off the area, they put little flags around it, they then scooped the dirt, they got a tractor to come in, scoop the dirt up, put the helmet in, then disappeared. Never said a single word to us about what it was that they had found.
Oh man.
Because it's all chemical and biological weapons that are tested down there. And so we're like, well,
hey, like, are we okay?
Yeah, like, I don't want to turn green. Like, what the hell?
Just don't put your helmet down. Okay? That's all.
And then we're sleeping on the ground. We're resting on the ground. Yeah, we're playing in the ground. We're digging trenches in the ground. You know, like, not a clue. So Suffield is one of those weird places that are so bizarre that, it's interesting. So they come and do desert training warfare because there's like very few trees there. But there's also a contingent of guys that do biological and weapons testing there.
Oh man!
In chemical warfare testing, so they'll at the plant in Medicine Hat, they'll all of a sudden take the pigs that are about to get slaughtered and say that goes to Suffield. and then they go test the piggies on them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And as medics, we did that as well. So at the height of the war, we were teaching tactical medicine, and that was one of the deals, was we had to work with some piggies. So, yeah, it disturbed a lot of guys. Probably gave them a little twitches later on in life, but, it's part of the deal. And there's nothing better than learning how to do it on an actual biological being. Yeah, because then you really learn how a tourniquet works or doesn't work, or how the drugs work or doesn't work. Because a pig is basically a human, so same vessels, same stuff. So
man, but and that would have been the war. At the height of the war, you're talking about the war in Afghanistan.
Yeah, the war in Afghanistan.
Okay,
yeah.
So speaking of the war in Afghanistan, do you want to sort of give us a comfortable version or whatever you feel like talking about? Like,
sure.
Like, what was your experiences in Afghanistan?
So I did 2 tours, one in Kabul in the capital, one in Kandahar in the south, and we were the first. So go back to Kabul. After 9/11, Canada sent a contingent to Kandahar, the 3rd Battalion guys that I work with,
right.
And then we had a break for about 4 months, and then we sent our guys to Kabul, and the idea was to kind of create peacekeeping or peacemaking. And at the time, the Taliban had all fled back to Pakistan, out of Afghanistan, where they were located, and so it really looked that there was not going to be a resurge. And then the Americans decided to go to Iraq and pulled almost all the troops out of Afghanistan, which then caused the Taliban to say, okay, we can try and take back the country.
We can. Yeah, right.
And so by 2004, 2005, they were back in Kandahar, and so we got there in 2005, and they were just starting their stuff back in Kandahar, trying to take it. And they thought we were weak and inadequate, and Canadians, who cares about them? And we'll just kill a couple soldiers, and they'll go running home. And it didn't happen that way for them. So.
No, it didn't happen at all. So that was in Kabul.
Yeah, that's right. That was in Kandahar. But
sorry,
Kabul,
Kandahar.
yeah.
Okay. And this would have been during when the States had gone into Iraq, and it was like the height of the weapons of mass destruction. And
so 0304 was the height of the Iraq War.
Okay.
And I think it was 04 that Bush declared mission accomplished, and then everything went to hell.
Just all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, I mean, the actual invasion of Afghanistan, the destruction of Saddam's army, worked perfectly.
Right.
And that's one thing that we tend to forget. We kind of loop the occupation with the invasion. The invasion was the kicker. It crushed it. But the occupation, they had no clue. They disbanded the army, disbanded the government, gave these guys no jobs, no pensions. So what are they going to do? They're going to hate the guys that just invaded and took all that stuff away, and that's what happened. And then ISIS was created, and the Sunni Shiite
They just
split.
came in and took advantage of the situation.
Yeah, when you remove control, anarchy is left, and that's exactly what happened.
How could that have been done better?
Oh, easily. Keep the government. So all they had to do was get rid of Saddam, put in a combined provincial government of provincial leaders from each town, each area. Then through them, they vote on a leader. Then eventually they have an election, keep the army paid, keep them pensioned, keep them occupied, keep the police, the judicials, everything. And how that works, the great example is Cyprus. We have peace. People go there for vacation. Bosnia-Herzegovina, they have an army, they have a government. Croatia, all that stuff. So it works. The model works. And of course, Germany after World War II, Japan, all that stuff works totally. So,
having been there, do you think that was all ready to go? Because there's going to be people that are like, well, the whole thing was just so destroyed. Do you think that there's at the time being there, were those people there ready to take over if that accommodation had been made? Like, were there the leaders there?
The people were there, the community leaders, the locals. They loved their people.
Of course they did.
Everybody does. It's their home. They want to take care of their homes.
Yeah.
So Tikrit, which was where Saddam was born and raised and stuff, the people wanted to take care of it. And sure, maybe that town would have been heavily Sunni or Shiite or Islamist. So be it. But that's their little town. And through a collective of different leaders, you then get a choice. The problem was the Americans were never willing to agree that the Iraqis would have that choice.
Man.
And so in Afghanistan, they did exactly what I mentioned. So they did a bunch of provincial stuff. They voted in Hamid Karzai. Then they did an election. So the first election of Karzai was a good one. It was clean. The second election of his was corrupt.
Super corrupt.
And then the next election was actually quite clean. And that's where the doctor recently won. I can't think of his name right now. But
we'll stick that in. I was just reading something about that the other day. I can't think of his name off the top of my head either, but... right, I will. That's an interesting story all by itself. We'll stick in a link about that guy.
Yeah, for sure. Very cool guy.
Yeah.
And it shows, so going back to Afghanistan in 2001 had a GDP of, say, 2 billion. It now has a GDP of 25 billion, I think it is. They used to have no girls' schools. They used to have no girls' healthcare. They used to have no women's healthcare. The life expectancy in 2001 was 42 years old.
Oh.
Life expectancy now is 65 years old. So
What
a
an
kid
amazing
born
improvement.
now is that much of a difference. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that tells you right there that it was worth it.
Yeah.
And so many people don't want to hear that. They want to think that it wasn't worth it because that's the story and mantra that they carry.
That's a big thing. Like, and I'm not saying that, but what would you say to someone who, and I'm not talking about like a violent confrontation, but they would say to you like, this wasn't worth it.
I get that a lot, and it's on my Facebook feed. A lot of guys just who are struggling, mainly, they don't think it was worth it. And then I just list all the numbers. Just that stuff. The fact that the Taliban aren't actually in charge of the government. It's a democracy. The Taliban want to be part of it. They're actually asking for peace, which is very difficult for guys that have just fought to understand that.
Yeah.
But that's what our grandfathers did with the Nazis. So they go and
That's right.
clean up Bergen-Belsen, see all these Jews just killed and piles of bodies. How in the hell were they ever able to get peace? And yet that was forced on them. And a lot of those Canadians never really liked Germans or Japanese. A friend of mine was his grandfather was held in a Japanese prisoner of war camp as a Royal Winnipeg Rifle after Hong Kong. And so he struggled with all that kind of stuff. And for years, for his whole life, he hated the Japanese, and he lived in Saskatchewan, so he wasn't around it. So yeah,
that's hard to let that go. I mean, under something like that, but it wasn't them. It wasn't and that's always the thing is like, we're not the generation that did that. You're holding on to something, but it was still done. You know?
And so for me, it is the generation that did that.
Right.
So now, some of the guys see a Naguib, and they see a burqa downtown, and they get all worked up. And I'm like, you just gotta chill. Like this girl is walking down the street. She's not gonna try and kill you.
Yeah.
The risk of that is minimal. And just go back to your training and look for risk assessments. Is the girl in the burqa wearing combat boots and has his little hairy face sticking out through the windows and stuff? And then okay, maybe that's an issue. Maybe then kind of reevaluate what you're doing. But that doesn't happen in Canada.
Right.
We don't have that. So we've had our terrorism. Now
We have.
Yeah, and
Even right here in Edmonton.
Yep. Yeah, the incel guys in Toronto, the ISIS dude who drove the van.
Oh.
And we were lucky on that one.
And we're like a couple blocks away from when that happened.
Yeah, I was in Toronto at the time, and with the Invictus
Toronto's
games.
also had it as well.
Yeah, and we were with Prince Harry at the opening of the Invictus games and stuff.
Oh,
and
wow.
So we left that, or I think it was closing. So we left that, and the security was just insane. We couldn't get cars and anything. We didn't figure out why. And then later we realized that the ISIS dude had done the van attack in Edmonton, just like 2 blocks from here, from my house. And of course, I got little tags on my wheelchair that says I was in the military and I was a medic, and I served in Afghanistan. And Army guys love their badges, so it's like Boy Scouts. So.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh, hey, atb.com/economics. On Perch, the podcast, ATV's Director of Insight, Rob Roach, takes us across our province to meet the people who are driving our economy forward. With in-depth analysis and insight, Roach connects with the experts, influencers, and big thinkers who are helping to shape Alberta's economy. Listen and subscribe to Perch, the podcast, on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Back to you guys.
Your military experience, how does that affect your life today?
It changed everything in my life. So I went from just working retail and selling electrical supplies and warehouse stuff to where I am today, a paramedic and medic that has seen and done more things than I ever thought humanly possible for a single person. And then after injury and after leaving the military, we managed to, with my help with others, to change not only the military medical system, but the civilian medical system. So through amputation, through virtual reality systems in various hospitals that the military helped pay for, which actually then service the public. So we've changed the entire way that people are treated nowadays, but not just in my case with amputation, but the people that have post-traumatic stress. Now that's common, that's known. So the police are not hidden by it. The firefighters can talk about it. The EMS, who were hidden by it, can now say the words, and that's awesome. And I don't even like using post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't like using the word disorder. I just like post-traumatic stress. because you can achieve and get over it. Some people can't, and that's fine too. Everybody's an individual with it, but it's not a disorder. To say it's a disorder is, I think, a disservice to the person who's had that. It's saying that you aren't good enough, and that's bullshit.
I agree with you completely. I've never thought of it that way.
Yep.
And
they say post-traumatic stress syndrome or illness or trauma. No, it's none of that crap.
Just
the guy had post-traumatic stress, and he may or may not get better.
Yeah. But that, you're right. You're absolutely right. You're oh man. I love that perspective. Like this, we usually we do, like, we'll be like, oh, is the Earth actually flat? And we'll make jokes about it and stuff like that. But the whole thing constantly about these theories is like people get a certain perspective on something and then they share it and people are like, oh wow, I never thought about it that way. But this is one, like, that's real, man. Like that's a
well, this affects so many, right?
It does.
10% of the population has some sort of post-traumatic stress issue. Be it women. Of course, women are affected by this tremendously by the sexual assaults and sexual aggressions and by us idiot men that are doing stuff. I mean, I can't remember. I was Tommy Hilfiger, the owner. He was hugging everybody in meetings. He'd go up behind them and hug them and rub their chests and stuff. And then finally, someone said, it's 2019. You gotta stop this.
Yeah,
shit.
Man, totally.
Yeah, it's like in a fashion house.
Knock it off, Tommy.
Exactly.
And
get your hands to yourself there.
And that's on top of something like I think the statistic is like 1 in 4 have dealt with a miscarriage in some capacity.
And a sexual assault.
Yeah, sexual assault.
The same numbers too.
Man, it's wild. And we're like, you just don't hear about it, and a lot of guys are clueless to it and don't realize that. But something like your body not being able to carry through with a pregnancy, like that could be horribly traumatic.
For some, it's the most horrible thing in the world. For others,
never
it's
just talk about it.
It's just part of the body and part of the process, right? And an abortion is just a man-made miscarriage. So as much as we look at miscarriages, we also have to look at, say, an abortion and say why someone chose to do that or didn't, and totally valid reasons. And it's always the woman's choice first, and then the man has a choice second. Yeah. So I think we always have to kind of put that in there.
We absolutely do. We've man, we're stepping on some serious stuff here. Yeah, this is good though. Okay, so just before anyone's like, if anyone's listening to this and being like, okay, get it, I got it, and they might not be familiar with your story, and they're like, post-traumatic stress. This is something that you were in Afghanistan. You were a veteran. You came back home. Like what makes you qualified to talk about this? Like, what would make? Well, I can think of a few things, but like, what would be if someone hadn't met you, if someone had never seen you, if someone was not aware of the situation? How would you be able to say to them, like, look, I know what I'm talking about it, and you can share as much about that as you want to.
Well,
but
for me, I lost both legs in a suicide bombing, and then I got burns to my hands and my face. My wife and I separated amicably because of the injuries and stuff, and then her response to it. So it was all a difficult process. The whole after injury is incredibly difficult, and post-traumatic stress is all part of that.
Right.
And some people really go a dark turn, especially close friends that are also double amputees that are going through drug use and post-traumatic stress, where I just don't seem to have that problem. I seem to be okay with it, and I think the reason is we were one of the first guys that were injured in Afghanistan, and so that everybody asked that story. It was promoted, it was talked about, it was in the news. I did a bunch of interviews and stuff. And the more you talk about a story, the more or the less it has influence in your life. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So if I was raped, if I talked about that story all the time, it would own less and less and less of me, less of my soul.
Oh.
I always think that you have a mark on your soul when you get injured. And that's what it was. Mine physically, could be emotionally, could be brain injury, could be rape, could be whatever, torture. Mm-hmm. But if you talk about it and knowing that, then my theory is that you diminish how the post-traumatic stress influences your life. And that's my big selling point on it. So when I talk about post-traumatic stress, I come at it from hopefully an end point of where people could be.
Yeah.
So, because I'm happy and healthy, and I have bad days, but I mean, so does every human on earth.
Everybody has bad days, yeah.
So, I mean, that's the kicker, right? So they see the bad day and they go, oh, he's suffering. It's like, no. It's like the Flames lost. They always lose, but that's okay.
They always lose, yeah. So there's one thing you can count on.
Exactly. Actually, Oilers.
Yeah.
They all lose.
There was a girl not a girl. There was a lady in, I think she's in Fort McLeod down southern Alberta. Mm-hmm. And I love this quote, and just reminded me really quick. And she'd said, I have Parkinson's, but Parkinson's doesn't have me.
Yeah,
and I thought that's amazing. Like that.
What's his face from really bad Parkinson's? Canadian gay.
Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
He isn't owned by Parkinson's.
Oh, I love it.
Like he walks around still acting, for God's sake.
Yeah, it's incredible.
With that stuff. I saw Muhammad Ali at a hotel in Vegas about 2 or 3 years before he died, and he was in a betting booth in an old hotel off the strip where I was staying, and no one went around him. No one bugged him. He just was allowed to do his betting and hang out and watch a couple sports. And I'm like, was I Muhammad Ali? And I'm like, oh, I so want to say hi or get an autograph, even scribble or anything.
Yeah.
And then I didn't. And then the bartender came over and gave me a free drink, and he says, this is just because you didn't go up to him. And I was like, oh, cool. Oh, that's same way. My sister was on the transit the other day, and I'm friends with Rick Mercer. And he goes up to my sister who's sitting there, and he's like, hey, Nancy, how you doing? And so Nancy goes on Facebook, like, oh, Rick said hi, and all this other stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so because they met a couple of years ago, and he's just remembered, and it's I love that stuff.
You must have just read my mind. So I need you to stop reading my mind in case I'm having private thoughts. But I was just about to ask about Rick Mercer. Yeah, I know. Stop touching yourself, for God's sake. Yeah, no.
Leave that scab alone. Girls don't like scabs.
It's a tasty little snack sometimes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's crunchy like chicken.
Ugh. But Rick Mercer had a very interesting role in your life. Like, did you know him before he went on one of his Rick's rants?
Well, this is the cool thing. So in 2005, he came on a Canada trip with Guy Lafleur and General Louis Mackenzie and a bunch of other celebrities kind of thing. And so Rick showed up, and it's probably a 12, 15-hour flight. It's deadly, and you're in a Hercules, and you're bouncing around, and you're throwing up, and it's just nasty. And so these celebrities get off the plane, and then they have to be all go, 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 right?
Yeah.
And they're exhausted. And so I got to see Guy Lafleur, who has like the world's biggest hands, and I got little tiny girl hands like Trump, and he's just massive mitts. And it just comes in and shakes you.
Baseball gloves.
It's so cool.
Oh.
Like, I mean, they didn't use any gloves back in the day, no helmets, like just hardcore. I love it.
There's no bones or cartilage in there.
But Rick was really tired, and so with Rick, I said, hey, dude, I don't want to bug you too much. I know you're super tired, but do you want anything from Afghanistan that you couldn't get in the market like we have here? And he's like, yeah, for sure. And I said, just give me $100 and I'll send you the best stuff in the world.
Man.
Yeah, so he gave me $100 American, and then I proceeded to buy some really cool things. So I bought a September 11th prayer rug from the Taliban that's got the Twin Towers and a guy jumping off, two planes hitting it that he prayed on.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was cool. I gave him a burqa that was worn, and I said, make sure it's not been washed. So,
right.
So when I visited him later in his studio, I actually saw the burqa hanging up in the carpet.
Man.
One of the cool things was a little clock, and it's a little plastic clock, and twice a day it's the call to prayer. And it announces it, and it does the call to prayer, and it's the most annoying, tinny voice that you could ever imagine.
I was imagining this beautiful thing.
No. Like even the Muslims were just like, oh, I hate these things. So the best part is you set it for a weird time, like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So that in these office, all of a sudden it's the call to prayer. So a friend of mine did the same thing, and his wife just threw it on the ground, smashed it, and just hated the thing. And then the next day, there it was again, perfect. And she's like, what the hell, smash? And sure enough, he goes into the closet, and there's like 18 of them.
Oh, beautiful.
He's like,
so
you'll
funny.
never beat me. So yeah, we gave him that stuff. And then Julian was really cool. We went to this little overlook, and I said, take a look, and from there you poke your head up, and this is where the tank should be to protect us, but we don't have one because we're Canada. And
that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, whatever. We actually hired a militia leader, Colonel Turgeon, and they nicknamed him Skinner for the fact that on our reconnaissance for my tour, there happened to be a bombing just inside his neighborhood, and as we were talking about neighborhoods, so that's his neighborhood, but someone from outside his neighborhood decided to bomb it. Ugh. He got angry, captured the lead guy of that cell, hung him from the Martyrs Gate in downtown Kandahar, skinned, and wrote Provincial Reconstruction Team on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they were safe for probably 6 months. And then when I got there, when I blew up, they actually managed to capture the suicide bombing cell guy, Pierre Mohammed. He was captured, put in jail, and Mullah Naguib, a guy from just outside of Kandahar, who plays both the Taliban and Americans and everybody on each other. He pulled him out, got rid of him, escaped. Then, 6 months later, He's in a Kabul high security prison. Lisa LaFlamme is interviewing him. And
Okay.
yeah, and then he disappears again.
What?
Yeah, goes into the world. And the guy that organized the kill teams to go after him is Harjit, the Minister of National Defense.
Oh, wow.
So that's my connection with Harjit. And so I've always been friends with Harjit because of that. So within this small community of, like you were mentioning, Rick, it's also everything else. That's the cool thing, yeah. So, but the funny thing is I did Vimy Ridge 100th with Lisa LaFlamme, and I'm like, you interviewed my killer. She's like,
That's
what?
incredible.
Yeah, he tried to murder me.
Yeah.
How come you didn't ask him about it? She's like,
I'm glad you have such a good. Oh my God, this is
like,
that dark
I did.
humor I was talking about.
She's like, I did. Yeah. But she was asking about our diplomat that died. Yeah, and of course she
right.
just kind of passed off on the guys, not on purpose, but just you focus on the main story, right?
That's right.
Yeah, because the thought was killing soldiers wasn't working. Let's kill a Canadian civilian. And then because the justice system in Afghanistan didn't work, then Harjit went after these guys, and Mullah, the third highest in the Taliban, was the guy Mullah Dadullah. He was the guy that ordered the attack on our diplomat.
Right.
So then he went after him, and a couple months later, there's his dead body.
And that was that.
Mullah Naguib's dead. Pierre Mohammed's disappeared off the face of the earth. So yeah, I'm comfy.
Right.
I sleep well at night.
I was just going to ask about this. Did that? And I know that this feels really awkward to ask, but knowing that the people that they're gone, does that?
It's my job. As a medic, I'm there to save lives, but I'm also there as a Canadian to make sure that innocents are safe.
Right.
So my first job is always innocence, protect the innocents, and that would be like in Rwanda or Yugoslavia. You see a warlord who's about to kill innocents, get rid of them.
Get rid of them.
Now, my job as a medic, I may be able to patch them back up, and then we go interview them, and I don't care what happens to them afterwards. Hopefully
Right.
jail. I prefer jail because these guys want to be martyrs.
They do. They totally do.
They want to die. So no, the key is not to give them death. It's to
Right.
give them the longest humanely cancer-ridden life for as long as humanly possible. And everybody who's ever had cancer in their life knows exactly that's the kind of pain and suffering that you want to give those kind of dudes. And the best medical care so they can come back.
And I wouldn't. I've seen that up close,
dark,
and
eh?
I know that is dark, but it's very, very true, and I appreciate your honesty because I've seen the ravages of cancer in my father passed away from cancer, and seeing him go through that, I'm like, why is this beautiful person suffering through this when someone who's done cruel, awful things should be the person in this,
Well, arguably, there's two reasons for it. There is a God, and if there is a God, he's an asshole.
Right.
Because he allows this shit to happen. The other option is that there isn't a God, and cancer happens because we live in this world where cancer happens. Because
cancer happens, right?
It's the environment we
Yeah.
live in. So I mean, either you're agnostic or an atheist about it. So, but I don't think there's such thing as a heaven, and if there is, I don't want to be there because people have said, Jesus is testing you on your limb loss. I'm like, well, if he is, I'd like to speak to him for a couple hours.
just
we'll talk.
Couple questions.
Yeah, we're gonna just talk quietly in a corner. Him and
Yeah.
I, we can discuss some things.
So, okay, now we had talked about this here. Now I just kind of feel like I have to point this out. We are conspiracy guys, but we're not our whole thing is we'll list a conspiracy and be like this is what the people who believe this theory think. And
I love a good conspiracy, and I used to be a conspiracy guy who believed a lot, and then I scratched the surface and realized that underneath the surface of 99% of this stuff, there's nothing there.
Oh.
But unless you go to Tuskegee,
Speaking our language.
Tuskegee Airmen, the Tuskegee Airmen, the Tuskegee County, and it turns out the government was infecting people with syphilis and not giving them health care, black dudes. And so these guys suffered horribly. Now, there's a question is, a recent conspiracy that came up was Lyme disease created by the government in the 50s.
Lyme disease?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the ticks were weaponized to go out in the public and spread Lyme disease. There's a book on it, and arguably that's a kind of conspiracy that more likely than not is true. Medicine that got out of hand.
Bioengineered something.
Oops.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be released on the bad guys, but whoopsie-doos.
We tested on ourselves, and it went to the Appalachians. And if you look at where the Lyme disease went, it went Appalachians, then it went west. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Could be.
So, could be. It's a could be one.
Well, we'll talk about Area 51 here. So this is a very brief rundown. This is really, I think a lot of people are pretty much basically familiar with Area 51. So it's an American classified military facility set inside a classified test and training range roughly the size of Connecticut. I don't know how big Connecticut is.
Size of Area 51.
Size of Area 50. Yeah, there we go. Why the number 51? So the numbering system comes from the adjacent Nevada test site where the U.S. tested nuclear bombs. So it's right beside that, which is interesting.
Nellis Air Force Base. And if you look in the maps, it's all pockmarked with stuff. It's crazy. And actually, John Wayne filmed his movie Genghis Khan there, and that's how he got cancer. Yeah.
Oh, and the whole crew got cancer.
Yeah. Because they're playing in nuclear waste. So, bad idea.
Just playing in nuclear waste.
Oh, and if you want to see something really culturally insensitive, look up John Wayne as Genghis Khan.
That's awesome.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's almost as bad as the Japanese guy in Holly Gold Lutley's Breakfast at Tiffany's. The guy upstairs who's Mickey Rooney, and he plays a Japanese guy, and it's like the worst Japanese character and reference, and oh my God.
It's pretty bad.
It's
it's in Nevada, Area 5, Area 12, Area 11. On an early test map, it was like there's this big rectangle block of land, and they said, oh, there's Area 51. So what happens in Area 51 officially is since the 1950s, it's been home to military and intelligence community programs. That sounds so nice. Just a bunch of kids playing baseball or whatever.
Community programs.
So they generally focus on overhead espionage, so everything from drones to spy planes to stealth jets.
Yep.
Also, a lot of electronic countermeasures, going up against radar, defeating radar, making sure that other people don't defeat our radar, blah, blah, blah. Any captured foreign weapons, and this is what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So anyone captures something, it goes to Area 51, it's reverse engineered, radar systems, planes, and then there's this thing with the, and this is from someone's book, I think his last name was Campbell, I think, and he's the History Channel, like, UFO hunter guy.
Okay, yeah.
He's like, oh, it's the Central Intelligence Agency paramilitary training of foreign fighters at 51. So these are governments these are programs that the government jealously guards. They don't want anyone to know about, and Area 51 is the perfect place to run these operations.
But the funny thing with that is that's not true. The Contras weren't trained at Area 51. They were trained in a crappy Texas town, and they would fly these guys, and I think it was in a Tom Cruise movie, and they go there, and he was dealing drugs, and then he ended up working for the CIA, and so they would deal drugs across the Central America, and then they would come back, and then on the way back they'd carry all these Contras on the plane, and then half the Contras would just disappear into America. Yeah,
jump off.
And they're not in Area 51. They're hanging out in like Little Rock or some crappy place, Texas. So, yeah,
that is interesting.
Yeah,
that was recent too. That was just a couple years ago, that Tom Cruise movie, and it was surprisingly good.
It was good. Yeah,
it was.
I don't mind Tom Cruise. Just don't talk about Scientology.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Wacky doodle. Although I like that. What was that one where he died like 1,000 times? That was brilliant. Because if you want to see Tom Cruise die, you get to see him die in every way humanly possible.
And it was really good. I think it was The Edge of Tomorrow. And then it was called
and Emily Blunt is
she was in
brilliant.
It.
Yeah, I love her. Yeah.
That movie was awesome.
Yeah.
And that didn't...
They're actually doing a sequel, which I have no idea how they're going to do that.
Does he...
He does a whole bunch more.
Yeah.
He gets to die a bunch more. That's
all that matters.
If you're a bit of a... I can see that being a sadistic thing. You're like,
oh, totally.
And he's crazy. He'll be like, strap me to the side of a plane. Let's fly to the moon. Yeah. I can hold my breath. I'll learn how to hold my breath for 6 hours.
Yeah, and that's what he did with the new movie, the new Top Gun. He flew his own. He owns a Mustang, a P-51 Mustang from World War I or World War II, and he flew into the site. And he's got So I mean, it's just cool stuff.
He's nuts.
Yeah.
I think one of these days, I wonder what he's going to have to hurt in order to be like, okay,
stop now.
I've gone a little too far, a little too cruise crazy. So the alien connection started in 1947. Roswell, New Mexico, apparently an alien ship was seen. Maybe it crashed. Aliens are found. Maybe they were dead. Possibly their technology and their bodies were taken to Area 51 for research purposes, which is where we get things like iPads and Velcro and stealth jets and dinner plates that can see through walls. And the government...
That was Fort Benning in the Israelis. So, I mean, if you really want to get conspiracy, that's cool.
Yeah, man. And I love it. And this
that's the real thing. And that's the cool part. Like
that's right.
These Israelis show up, and it's Canadians on an American base in a testing site. And
so
we're
cool.
playing. And when inside the debriefing room, the testing site, there's a huge poster from Starship Troopers. So
That's wild.
Yeah, read. It was written in 1957.
It's an old book.
Brilliant
Yeah.
book.
And the movie, the first one.
kind of sucked, but there's going to be a new one. So
What? No, Paul. We're gonna have to stop the interview right now. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Because that first one, man.
yeah, you're just like the showers.
Couple of guys in the shower. Nothing wrong with that.
exactly.
No. What I loved was Doogie Howser.
Yeah,
Like-
it's a Nazi.
Yeah.
It's a Gestapo Nazi. It's freaking brilliant. And in the book, there's even more fascism to it because the author looks at fascism as the only choice left for a democracy.
For democracy, and it's like, ooh, that's
It's dark.
that's what sci-fi's for, though, right?
But exactly. It's
Yeah.
to test the limits.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And his view in 57, and it's actually not 57, it's 54, right during the Korean War. So,
Just out of World War II. Right?
Yeah, so World War II, Korean War, he's seeing that the Soviets are doing their stuff. How can we stop the Soviets? Democracy is weak in the West. Europe isn't even ready yet. How can we possibly stop this kind of horrible communism from taking over the world? And all we in the end had to do was just outpay him and outspend him.
Yeah.
Little did we know that was the winning strategy.
Just hang tight.
Hang tight and
Give 'em
outspend the
some money,
suckers.
yeah.
Which is hilarious.
We actually, speaking of hilarious, so that the alien connection was. Have you guys seen the alien autopsy video?
Sure.
Yeah, but
Have you seen it?
they
Yeah,
said it was
of course.
fake, though.
Later on, they were like, okay, yes, it's fake. But what the guy that released it said, he's like, it's fake. But we saw the real video, and we very detailed, like elaborately reconstructed the real video that we saw. But we couldn't get that, so we had to fake it.
It's true. It's the sex tape that I had of myself with these models was all fuzzy. So what we did is we redid it, and we used supermodels to indicate that that's what actually happened.
Sure.
Yeah, and the clock on the wall was from 1998. So yeah, totally happened. It's exactly how it happened.
So not very. Oh, sorry, and a guy named Bob Lazar.
Lazar.
Okay, now the interesting with Bob Lazar is there's a Netflix documentary
Yeah.
on it.
It's
and
out right now,
A lot
that's
of
right.
the stuff that he said back then, it has come true. As much as he talks about UFOs and stuff, he produces aerogel, which is the lightest material on Earth. And it's stronger than steel, stronger than titanium.
Interesting.
And it's a foam, if you would. And cars can drive over it. It can be used as armor. It can be used. But this is a guy who says, I was with aliens. And yet now he's producing in this little factory in Wisconsin or some crap like that, aerogel. And fireworks, because he likes fireworks. He's just the oddest guy.
That's an interesting combination. So, but you think are you suggesting this is like some alien technology that he came across, and he was like,
No,
what's this sticky
I think
stuff?
it's, if anything, it's weapons tech that has come from somewhere. I don't know where. It could be from Russians, and they were reverse engineered. The Nazis, we know they did that stuff in the 40s with the V2s and stuff like that. The Americans created the V3, which was their first space plane or space rockets.
Looked a lot like what they were. Yeah.
Yeah, and it basically was. And von Braun was there, and
Yeah.
Operation Paperclip brought all the Nazis over, and so that's all stuff that's real. And then anytime they would capture a Soviet plane, the Israelis or whoever, the Japanese, they would send it to Area 51, and they reverse engineer and test it and see its capabilities, and then do an aggressor squadron to fight the Western powers. And so I mean, all this stuff's real, and that's the conspiracy stuff that's so cool. So
Well, there's always a lot of truth in these things. Like, do you feel like it's possible that someone who, I don't know how to, someone in the 50s and 60s, they're like, I saw an early version of a stealth jet go down. Oh, that looked like a UFO. I saw a dude get out in like a weird,
astronaut.
So he's like, oh, it's an alien,
Yep.
and it's actually just some guy in like a big.
So if I was 10 years ago, if I saw Elon Musk's Starship, which looks exactly
This is
like
exactly what I'm talking about,
the Martian stuff from Bugs Bunny and Buck Rogers in the 30s.
Right.
If I had seen that 10 years ago, I would have said that's an alien ship. There's no possible way Canada, or America, or anyone could ever create that without this stuff leaking out.
Right.
And he's out there making it in the middle of Texas. He's just building this prototype, and then he's going to fly it next year, and in 3 years he's going to put people on Mars.
That's what he says.
That's insane. But he's already said everything he said. As much as people lambast him over, he's created that. I just came back from Revelstoke in Calgary, and all I saw was Teslas going back and forth. And people would say, "Oh, they don't have the range. They can't do it." Well, dude, how come I just saw 50 of them?
Yeah, totally.
Like, it makes no sense. But that's the kind of stuff that I love, because that stuff that actually happened not in our lifetime, like this year.
Yeah.
That's something this year. Well, and that's actually my next point here. So in Canada, apparently we have our own little Area 51 right here in Alberta. We talked about Suffield earlier.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a joke. So I got this from like a wherever it is. It'll be in the episode description, and it seems like a place where people with some interesting ideas might go to. But it was Canada's UFO landing field at CFB Suffield, measuring 1,000 square miles. Any high-speed jet pursuits of these UFOs at the time were unsuccessful and required a different approach other than chasing them. And this is like in the 40s and 50s. Yep. So they had these Canadian jets flying after them. They couldn't shoot them down or obtain their technology, so the whole thing got canned. And then in 1967, Canadian Defense Minister at the time, Paul Hellyer.
Yeah, he was a Liberal, I think. And
Yeah.
what interesting thing with him is he's a huge UFO buff. He goes to all the UFO conferences. He talks about his connections with UFOs. And there's an incident in Springfield, Nova Scotia, I think it is. And he talks about how this that was the UFO crashed, and then the Canadian subs went after it. And yeah, so it's pretty cool stuff. Shoal Harbor or something like that. I can't remember. Anyways, but yeah, it'll be in the description. And it's pretty awesome stuff. But one of the neat things with Suffield is I encourage anyone to go to Google Earth and you just look at Suffield on a map. So just go see
Suffield, Alberta.
Suffield, Alberta on a map. And what you'll see is concentric circles as on the entire base going out.
And that's from the
weapons testing to test downwind, where the weapons goes, what happens when you drop a bomb in the center.
That's wild.
Yeah, and so that's why, as I told you about the helmet that changed color, we were in one of the concentric circles of probably a nerve agent is probably what it was. So.
And it could have been, I mean, I'm not saying experiment where they're like, who knows what happened?
Well, most likely
and you might find out in like 10 years.
Exactly.
You're like, oh.
Grow a second head, call him Bob. Hey, dude. Well, and the cool part is it was probably some sort of sulfur dioxide or chlorine weapons, mustard gas, that kind of thing, which would have changed Agent Orange, but more likely some sort of acid, which would have changed the color of the cloth. So it was probably living in a gopher hole. Gopher hole got disturbed, or the dirt around the gopher hole, the guy put his helmet down, or a trench, and then that's what happened.
Man,
so,
that's wild.
Yeah, so that's probably what happened.
It's been a long ban, long
They used
outlined.
to test humans in the 40s and 50s. So they would volunteer soldiers, and they didn't know what they were getting into, and they would test weapons and chemical weapons, biological weapons on them.
Yikes.
Yeah, and they paid them off later, but and the Brits are using that territory now, mainly on pigs and stuff. But and of course the protections are much better. But it's still it's an open area that is still pretty wild. It's got some stories. Not sure about modern UFOs in Suffield, but definitely British guys, which arguably when they're drunk act like aliens.
They're like aliens. Yeah. I used to do some gigs down in Medicine Hat, and then one time we were playing at this bar, and I thought they were joking, but they're like, oh, Prince Harry's here, so like everybody out, and like all these guys came in. I didn't know who was who, and I don't know if he was even there, but he was there at the time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And he got kind of in some little snafu with a girl in Calgary.
Yeah, Cowboys. Yeah, he hooked up with a Cowboys girl. Good for him.
Oh, we're all going to be shot any minute just for talking about this. Sorry, Prince Harry. Yeah, this is in your past.
Yeah, exactly. Meghan's not good now.
Yep. So September 19th, you said?
Yeah.
September 19th, 2019, the plan for See Them Aliens.
No one else has a better idea, so fuck it.
Is a Facebook group totaling over 1 million people. That's thus far. It's probably like 2 million people by now, and it'll be millions by then. They're planning to storm, this is hard to read. Okay, so they're planning to storm Area 51 on September 19th and see them aliens. So the basic idea is that there will be too many people for the military to stop, and that they'll just storm in, and the aliens will just be lying like in the lobby, and they'll just burst and be like,
they're waving. Hey.
Yeah.
Well, the side piece is the one I posted on my Facebook yesterday was talking about how everybody's going to try and have sex with these aliens. We're going to Captain Kirk that shit.
Why else do you think everyone wants to find him so bad?
I don't want to interview
what else do you
him.
do?
Yeah, exactly. I want to Captain Kirk that shit.
I think the aliens should be given a heads up. Like one person would be enough, but if they have to have sex with that many people, that's
But maybe that's their style.
Good Lord, that's a nightmare.
But they won't be angry at us. That's the key.
Well, and that could be, and there probably
save us.
there's like a hybrid. We talked about Antarctica being like the That's where red hair comes from. We both got the ginger touch. We both got the ancient alien.
I actually
gene.
have a CIA story. I have a tattoo on my arm that's 85 degrees, 25 south, 124, 005 west. And anyone can look that up on Google Maps and stuff, and you'll find it's the last mountain just before the South Pole, and it's named after a buddy of mine,
Cool.
LeShack. It's called
Len
Mount
LeShack.
Mount LeShack, and he was a CIA guy that lived in Antarctica for a year in the 50s. So back in the explorer days, and he then decides to go and work with the Navy guys and work with the CIA. So he knew a bunch of different language. So he was tied in with Cuba and all this other stuff. But the coolest part of his story is he actually did a thing called Project Cold Feet, and he came up with this idea. This is before helicopters had distance. So it was about 1957, 58. And so he decided that what we should do is fly over the Arctic,
Yeah.
parachute down onto a ice station run by the Soviets, and there we'll gather all this information, and then we'll take that and we'll somehow get that back home. Well, the submarines couldn't puncture the ice at the time. The helicopters couldn't do it. So his idea was the Fulton Skyhook. You raise a balloon, and
James Bond.
That's where it came from. Was my buddy.
Really?
Yeah, and that's why I had this tattoo on my arm when he died. So every time someone sees this tattoo, people say, "Oh, what's it?" They think it's where I blew up, but no, it's my buddy Len LeShack who came up with this idea.
Man.
So Batman.
It was in The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
That's right.
Dark Knight, he did it, and the crew that did it in Thunderball was his crew. 'Cause it's the same
wow.
Lancaster bomber
nice.
and everything. Isn't that cool?
It's so cool.
Yeah.
He must have been an older guy when you met him.
Yeah, I met him in Golden, BC.
Let me see.
Yeah, so here's a super spy living in Golden, BC, and he wrote a book called I can't remember, but I'll make sure I'll send you the link.
Please do.
Yeah, there's Project Cold Feet, but there's another one. It talks about his story, turning another leaf or something like that. He talks about his stories of finding gold and finding oil and gas, and then his next story is about a girl he met, and then the next chapter is about him in Russia on a Canadian passport in the middle of 60s, and then 67 he decides to pretend to be a Canadian expert in the Arctic, and he hooks up with the Soviets in Montreal in the 67 Expo,
Wow.
and then he introduces him, shows him around, and then he goes to Moscow on a Canadian passport, which, it's no diplomatic immunity. If he gets caught, he's toast, right?
Oh, man.
A limo shows up, and it's one of the Arctic guys, and he's like, "Oh, hey, I'm going to show you around Moscow." And he's like, "Oh, no, I got caught." But no, they were really nice about it, and he showed him around.
They were nice about it.
Yeah, and he got to go to like the Academy of Science and talk about Arctic stuff. So, because he was an expert in the Arctic, Antarctic, and oil and gas, and women. We just love women.
Oh, well.
So he was just the ultimate cool guy.
Nice.
Like,
That sounds pretty sweet.
yeah, Leonard LeShack.
Leonard LeShack.
Yeah.
That's really, you must have met a lot of really cool people.
One of his best friends is Susan Lucas, who lives in Victoria, and she introduced me to him and all the rest of it. She was living in Golden at the time, and then she turns out to be the world expert in Lord Nelson, the admiral.
Like the
one-armed guy, one-eyed guy, and the Battle of Trafalgar. She's the expert. And so if you go to the museum, military museums in Calgary, you'll see a bunch of stuff about Lord Nelson. You're like, what the hell is this doing in Calgary?
But
It's the
she's-
Navy, but that's the connection. Yeah. So.
That's incredible. I had some questions here for you, but I feel like this is like just. Do you think that let's say 3 million people show up to Area 51? Do you think the Air Force could probably stop 3 million unarmed people?
4 million bullets.
Do you think it would even be 4 million bullets? Or would it just
No.
be like they just
one per, and then you're good to go. All you have to do is kill the first 5, and then the rest of them will stop. Yeah.
like? Is there even forget that they shoot anybody? Just
Yeah.
completely non-lethal. Do you think there's any way that they just activate like a big force field that just drop a?
Don't need to just activate the private. That's they'll just. We know the day.
Right. Which makes it even sillier.
Yeah, I know, and it's a known area. So
Yeah.
all you have to do is say it's an exercise and issue your privates and corporals and stuff with bullets and park them all the way around the base. And if
Right.
anybody approaches, you shoot the ground. Say, do not approach any further, or you will be shot or arrested. And then arrest the few that do, and then. And
That's
charge the shit out of them.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest thing in the world, but it's super fun.
It is fun. I have a little. I'm going to make a little prediction. I don't do this very often on the thing here, but I feel like it'll be whatever. It'll be a lot of people. I don't think it's going to be actually 3 million.
Yeah.
Because I mean, working as a musician is one thing I can guarantee is like it's Facebook. Everybody says they're coming. You can count on a fraction of that many people.
Well, hasn't Keanu Reeves said he's going to be there?
There's so many people. But
I mean, John Wick that shit.
Oh, that would
awesome.
be. If anyone could get in, it's Keanu Reeves.
3 million people are one Keanu Reeves.
Oh, see, now I'm changing my. Okay, outside of that,
Keanu Reeves, friend of the show.
I love how
crazy.
Keanu Reeves has become an icon.
Yeah.
We're in a
he
Reeves
hasn't-
renaissance.
Yeah, and he hasn't changed his acting style. He hasn't changed at all who he is. And you look at his early stuff and you kind of go, oh, I see why we didn't like it that much. Even Matrix was a bit painful at times. And then you see now, they direct him to be him.
To be that guy.
Yeah.
I saw Toy Story 4 yesterday, and he's actually in it. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but he's Captain Canuck, he's Duke Kaboom.
Kaboom.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you guys remember.
Do you know
these.
who
Yeah.
that's made after?
Is it
Super Dave?
Thank you,
Super Dave Osborne.
So there's Super Dave Osborne.
He just recently died.
He just recently died. Was he Canadian?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was awesome. You jump off the CN Tower and they throw a dummy down and then he'd be on the ground all twisted up. Like, stuff you couldn't even do now.
I'm fine, everybody. I'm good.
Hey, I'm gonna go.
But he, so
Just call an ambulance.
Duke Kaboom has a couple of real great moments in it, and his phrase is "Yes, I Canada," and it's so funny. But it's delivered with that same deadpan thing that.
Well, that's the best part. When you're just stoic and deadpan, that's the best humor.
And that's his thing. God knows why. He's probably been offered the worst things in the world. They're like, here's $1 billion. Just be in whatever.
Did you know Will Smith was offered The Matrix?
I did not know that.
Yeah. So
Can you imagine that?
So in the sales, the Wachowski brothers are sitting there, and they're all like, "Dude, what we're gonna do is like have you, and you're gonna be like bouncing around, and then we're gonna have like 50 cameras around you, and so it looks like you're dodging bullets, and it'll be totally awesome." And he's like, "No, I'm gonna do.
We're not
this.
gonna do that.
I'm gonna do Wild West."
That was the better choice for sure.
Can you imagine though? If
But they would have changed Matrix, because then you wouldn't have Lawrence Fishburne as because you wouldn't have two black guys. It's just America. That's not the way
You
they
could
do
have
it.
had Ben Kingsley or Danny DeVito.
Yeah,
Danny DeVito.
Just a
But Danny DeVito now, not Danny DeVito then. Danny DeVito now is brilliant.
See, I'm thinking that like
He's all bitter and twisted.
the rap that Will Smith would have come up like for the Matrix, because that was in the time when he was still like,
Fresh Princeton.
I gotta release a song that's like summarizing the movie and is like fresh and sweet and rad.
Yeah,
you know.
Matrix.
Well, that's got to be part of the,
He totally would
thing.
have. He would have done it.
You get if,
I'm in the
if you're going to get Will
Matrix.
Smith, you're like, okay, but it's in his contract that he's got to write the theme song, or at least perform the theme song.
Yeah.
I thought he would do it for Suicide Squad. I honestly thought he was like, he's gonna come back to form, and he didn't do it. And I was like, oh.
But Robbie, she was so good in that
movie was
core
amazing.
movie.
Yeah.
But she was brilliant, and
She was.
She just showed
Yeah.
exactly who she could be. And then now she's got an Oscar, which is amazing for that role. And now she's running around in the new movie I haven't seen yet with Quentin
Tarantino.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be
Oh,
good.
that-
man.
Looks amazing.
With the
Brad Pitt and Leonard.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, and it's about the Manson murders.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she
But
plays Sharon
from
Tate.
a funny side.
Yeah.
From the comedy side of the Manson murders.
Of course, it's always the best.
Yeah. Okay, so my prediction for September 19th is
A mass murder.
couple of people show up. Nobody really. A bunch of food trucks go. Somebody's selling bottled water.
totally
turns
taco trucks.
Turns into a big thing. And then next year they're like, let's do this again. We'll get some bands.
right.
And
Let's
then
just come back here every year.
Right at the
becomes
border,
like a
having
festival.
tacos. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Because that's what's going to happen. People are like, we're all together, we're all drunk, we're out in the sun. Let's get some tacos and beers. And
Someone's going to bring out a boombox.
some fresh jams.
Jam it.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It does. See, now that totally works.
That's totally, and that's
But
how
as
these
long
things
as it
get
doesn't
started.
become Coachella.
Okay.
Well, do you notice most conspiracy theories are from high people? Like, God love drugs.
I have noticed that. Yeah.
But
I don't mean to motion
Why you
towards
point at me?
Charlie.
What are you pointing at me for?
Totally flat. Yeah, man. It's like I talked to some dudes about it, and it's totally flat because I can't see any curve.
Yeah,
Like,
I trust my eyes.
Yeah, I trust my senses. Dude,
Yeah.
you're so stoned you can't even talk right now.
You can't,
It's
no.
senses, man. Senses.
Well, this has been really fun, man. Thanks so much for being on It's a Conspiracy. So you can listen to all of our episodes on itsconspiracypodcast.com. Plus, you can find links to our email, our Twitter, Facebook, merchandise, including Charlie's own.
Oldmandesign.com. That's right. Come on down and get your t-shirts and designs. We'll get you sorted.
And our that's got a link to our Patreon page. And yeah, you can hang out there. We will be back with our backmasking special on August 1st. Are you familiar with backmasking?
No, the only
That's right.
masking I do is with my hair on the back, and we make logos for team sports.
And then season 2 will begin on September 1st. So
Season 2 already.
Season 2 already. We're almost
Sweet.
there. But yeah, so thanks so much for stopping by. Feel free to subscribe, rate, review, share, be a friend, and please, please, please thank a veteran for their service today. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, man.
Buy them a beer. They prefer that.
Buy him a beer.
Yeah.
Don't say anything. Just
Buy them beer. Yeah, just say, don't thank me for my service. No, just here's your beer.
Here's your beer.
you go.
Or Slurpee or
Yeah.
whatever it takes. Yeah.
I don't care that you don't drink. Here's your
Yeah,
beer.
yeah, and then I can pass it to someone who does drink, or I'll just
Sure.
continue my drinking because I do drink. So,
Yeah, man. Oh, and I forgot to mention. Okay, so you're from Nova Scotia.
yep.
There's a great local business called Blowers in Grafton, and they are going to buy you dinner as
Sweet.
a thanks for hanging out with us.
I have to go to Halifax.
No, you have to go to White Ave. So,
Oh, okay, that's
yeah,
good.
Yeah. And here's a plane ticket to Halifax.
Yeah,
Hey,
sweet.
plane tickets for everybody.
No,
yeah.
that's good. I love their food.
Oh, man, it's so good.
Halifax
And-
street food, best thing ever.
Just a quick shout out to Lui-Chi's in Edmonton, just off Jasper Ave, for letting us set up and use your space for a little bit for the interview with Paul. Thank you very much. Thanks a whole bunch. Thanks a bunch, pals. Thanks.